I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I can't speak with these things, so I'm not going to encourage anybody else who is going to be speaking here. Take off your mask so we can understand. Wow, that's getting populated up here. Welcome. This is the first ever meeting of our three boards as a unit, and it's occasioned by the application that was initiated last week with the filing of a concept plan for a major renovation of the post office / deli store on Main Street, which is arguably the most important building in the village. Why this joint meeting? Because significant and possibly precedenting approvals will be required from all three of our boards. Can you shut that door, John?
One more attendee.
Pardons?
We have one more attendee.
Well, not yet. We're holding the meeting because we wanted all three boards to be hearing the same presentation and the same facts. It was deemed appropriate to do that. We want, since all three boards are going to have to be closely involved in this, we want to make sure that everybody is working from the same set of facts. And it's going to be, it's going to take enough time that this initial investment is important. Also, this will allow us to proceed on organizing and sequencing a very complex review process, of which I'll say more after the presentation is made. And also like to establish some ground rules for this meeting. This is an informational meeting only. Only members of the three boards will be allowed to participate in the discussion today. The public's going to have an ample opportunity to participate and put in whatever views they have. Each of our boards will be having several discussions on their areas of responsibility for getting the approvals. There will be public hearings when they have decided on the recommendations they want to make, at which the public participation will be solicited and welcomed. But for this meeting, we really just want to have everybody hear what the applicant wants. And I'd like to also limit the participation from our own board members. Limit yourself to questions about specifics in the plan that you may not fully understand or need any clarification for. But I want to refrain from any substantive comments or opinions on the plans, what people like, what they don't like, what they'd like changed, suggested alterations. The only focus today is on what is being proposed. So with that preamble, we have the presenters for the applicant take over.
Thank you. And thank you, Board of Trustees. Thank you, Zoning Board. Thank you, Architectural Historic Review Board. We feel grateful and honored that we would actually convene something like this. Only a week ago, we asked for it, and here we are here. We realize the importance of this building too, and that's why we suggested this as a way to kick things off. And we know we have to spend, we're going to be spending plenty of time with the Board of Trustees going over the site plan. The Zoning Board going to have quite a lot to say about this, as it is a non-conforming use with pre-existing dimensional non-conformities. And we know that the Architectural and Historic Review Board has a lot to say about this project too, as it is fits all of their criteria for review. So I'm going to introduce basically the team that you're going to be dealing with for the next few months. I'm Anthony Pasca, and Beth Baldwin and I are the attorneys for the project. She's sitting on the left over there. Frank Greenwald in the middle is the project architect. Britton Bistrian is our planner, planning consultant. David Rose is the project engineer. And in the middle on the screen is David Curry, who is the owner's representative and basically the project director. And I want to introduce him and let him say a few words about him and the owner. David?
Tony, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So we're very excited to have the opportunity to be a part of really restoring something that's been around for 150 years. I'm David Curry. My background is in architecture and construction, and the client is long-term Sagaponack resident, has been very enthusiastic about the village and the store and its central role in the village. When the property went on the market, the new owner saw it as an opportunity to do something very special for the community and restore and prepare this historical center of Sagaponack for its next 150 years, hopefully. It's that critical of a part of the village, as I think we all feel here. Clearly, there are a lot of moving parts, and we spent the last 9 months trying to identify and come up with a proposal for successfully addressing as many of the issues with the building and the site as possible, given the very tight constraints of all aspects of this. And with the goal of returning it to a historically respectful heart of the Sagaponack village fabric. So some of you may know the new owner, but she'd prefer to remain anonymous if we could, but she'd be happy to meet with the village board members and heads if you would prefer. So Tony, thank you.
So I want to just tell you what we view as the project goals, and that'll help guide a lot of our discussions from not just today, but for the next few months. First and foremost is the goal of preserving the historic uses in this building. This has been number one, the priority before even considering acquiring this building. We have a post office and a general store, and we know what the importance is of those two uses, and they have been around since the late 1800s. And as David said, that the goal is to make sure that they're going to be around for the next 150 years too. So that's number one. Preserving not just the historic integrity of the building itself, the design, but also restoring it where possible, because it has been butchered, may be a strong word, but it has been affected over the 150 years of its life, to the point where it does need some restorative work. One of our goals is to improve code compliance. We have an opportunity to take something that was built originally in the late 1800s and work in ADA accessibility, work in fire code protection, work in site engineering that didn't exist back then, and work in a sort of an eco-friendly, as friendly as possible sanitary system to deal with the facility as well. Another goal is to possible create in the attic area a space for the Hildreth family artifacts. There's many artifacts that they have collected over the years, and they've asked us if we can, and we're going to try to do that if the boards are willing, to create a conditioned space in the attic to preserve their artifacts. And then really the overarching goal is to do it in a way that the community can be proud of. That's what the client wants to do for the community, and that's why we're not going into this with preconceived demands. We're not going into this with it's either going to be this or nothing else. We're going into it with ideas, and hopefully you all agree a well thought out concept, but we're here to talk to the village and do it in a way that everybody's going to be proud of for the next 150 years. Maybe we start with some historic facts. This is how our package that we prepared for you started. So Rody, if you don't mind putting up the picture on page 2 of the PDF. Okay, so this is the original building that was put up in the late 1800s. It's different than the building that's there today. It was a post-Civil War building. As you can see, it originally had a front gable and it had a larger porch, covered porch than what you see today that steps up into the building. We don't know for sure, but we think that the building was probably set back a little bit from where it is today, based on the existence of the porch. And where the road lays out, otherwise the porch would have been in the right of way. So we assume that the building was set back at least a little bit from where it is today. And it did have the post office basically from the beginning when this was built. If you go to the next picture, Rody, page, it just shows later what happened to the building. We don't think we've got a definitive answer exactly when, but sometime probably after 1900 and before 1920, the original building was rotated 180 degrees. So it became a front to back, and then this new front addition was put on the building, and it's really been there since probably at least 100 years. Effectively, what you see here was done probably around the beginning of the 20th century. The front porch got reduced quite a bit. The front gable is gone. This is now a pitched roof leading to the street. But this has been effectively the fascia that's been in effect for about 100 years. So we are, let's see. I want you to show page 4, if you could. We've included in here, we've included some artifacts that the Hildreth family still keeps, including this model of the original building. Kind of shows the size of the front porch that existed back then from a different angle in the picture. Okay, you can go to the next page.
My apologies.
That's okay. Why don't you go to 5?
There you
Go to page 5.
go. Next one.
Yeah. Yeah, that has the building itself. But these are helpful. We're not, we're doing our best to sort of use these as inspiration, the artifacts and the model as inspiration for the restoration project. So why don't we talk about the design? If you can go to page 7 of the PDF. And this is the rendering of, at least the concept rendering of what we've come up with as an initial approach. What you'll see is that we kept the front, the layout of the current building with the pitched roof facing the street. We've kept essentially the same fascia for the building. The whole front part of the building is going to be kept intact but restored. The one addition that we put on this proposal is to add back a porch, a covered porch, into the concept. See if that's something that the board would allow us to do. We think it effectively takes a little bit of the original building and includes it as part of this building. But that is something that's going to be obviously discussed with all the boards. You show page 8, Rody, we can take a look at the back of the building. So what you hear about it a little bit too is that the rear part of this building is really the part that's been altered quite a bit over the years. And we'll take anybody through the space who wants to see it as these review processes go on, but you can really, if you're walking through it, see, I used the word butchered before, but it's really just a hodgepodge of additions and alterations that were done over at least 100 years, maybe more. And it just does not have, we believe, the historic integrity that the front part of this building still has. And so that's why we are proposing a more significant work on the back to create what you see here. On the right side of the drawing is going to be the main part of the store, or the back part of the store. And our vision is to have these open sliding doors that can bring light in. The doors can be open. On the left, you see a small portion that we're proposing to be used for the handicap accessibility. We have a common area effectively for the post office and the store to have accessible bathrooms, stairs to go downstairs, and an elevator shaft. If you turn the page, you'll also see that we are sensitive to spending the time with the architectural review board to know their concerns about light issues and glass. And so one of the features we propose is to have full barn doors that would be able to close up at night over the glass, so that there would not be the impacts that the board is very much concerned about. So that rendering shows how the concept of how those doors would work. Let's talk a little bit about the existing plans. We have included a full set of floor plans. If you want to turn to page 12, we'll run through them very quickly. Page 12 in your packet is the basement layout. Page 13 is the ground floor plan. Page 14 is the existing attic plan. Page 15 is the roof plan. 16 and 17 have the existing building elevations. So you can use those to compare to what we're proposing. And page 18 has the existing site plan of the building. Now, this is probably a good point to segue to the site plan changes, which is on the next page. We have the red line showing the existing building outline versus what we're proposing. And really, the number one issue that we're proposing as far as the site layout goes is to shift the building back about 15 feet, back and slightly to the north. And this is going to accomplish, we think, a couple of things. One is to create that area in the front of the building, just a little bit of a buffer between the sidewalk and the actual front of the building. We're allowed to put the front porch on, that's where the front porch would go. If we're not allowed to put the new front porch on, we would still want that as essentially an area where people can meet. If they've picked up their mail, if they want to, might ask for some chairs to sit down where people can just meet without interfering with the traffic. And that's, I know, David, you've said there have been some issues with safety. If there's something you want to point out about that?
We spent the first couple months just kind of watching pedestrian flow in and out of the building and the traffic, things like that. And it seemed like having a place where you could bump into your neighbor figuratively as opposed to literally, was something that would be nice to be able to do and have that space a little further away from the traffic on the road. The trees are great and wonderful, and the bench and the fences. Twice, just in the time that I've been a part of it since last July, we've had to repair the fence and relocate one of the benches from having gotten bumped into. And luckily that was not with anybody sitting in them. So it seemed like having a space where pedestrians and neighbors could actually be sort of off the street a little bit, more like the older general store seemed like something that would be really helpful.
But by setting the building back a little bit too, we increase or decrease the pitch on the accessibility road, which right now is non-compliant to the proper pitch for a handicap accessible ramp. We're going to get close. We may not get perfect, but we're going to get closer to what the required pitch is for an accessible ramp if we're allowed to shift the building back just a little bit. The ramp will still cross over the property line as it does today. And the Hildreth family is aware of this, and they've been working with us on this site plan, and you'll hear a little bit more about that too, that they are, they've been very generous about helping us to make this project work. I mean, it is their family legacy too. So they have been gracious about working with us on this to come up with a plan that preserves their legacy and makes this a functional building for many decades to come. You can see from this also where the cross hatching is on the back is where we're proposing to do the major restoration, where the front part, in front of the cross hatching is going to remain in its current configuration. The back part is what we're proposing to redo more significantly. You can see, you know what, you should show the site plan, page 27, briefly. What this plan doesn't show is on the full site plan, there is, you can zoom in on the bottom part of this. There's behind the store property is, you can see a trapezoid, which is something the Hildreth family has been, essentially agreed to allow us to take primarily for sanitary system purposes. And one of the big challenges of this project has been, how do we do this, any kind of reconstruction within the Suffolk County sanitary code requirements, which are in some ways more rigid than any other requirements that we ever have to deal with. And we've come up with this plan that the Hildreth family has graciously worked with us on, which is to use an additional portion of their property for it will become a sanitary easement. We'll be able to install our sanitary system across the lot line, but achieve an actual code compliant sanitary system, which would be a first for this property. That's basically the site plan. We could talk about the floor plan changes. And if you go to, really, these are on pages 20, 21, and 22. If you think it'll be visible on the screen, I'm not sure how easy it'll be to follow. But why don't you pull up page 21? 21 is the main floor, proposed floor plan. And with the floor plan that we're proposing, we're trying to achieve, I think we've identified basically 4 goals on this. One is to improve the post office space, because we have the ability to do that. If we're going to make changes to the rear of the building and to the basement level, we have an ability to improve their space. And so, David, maybe you could talk about, he spent a lot of time talking to the post office and figuring out what their needs are. Maybe you can talk through the changes to the postal space.
Sure, Tony. So I think probably one of the most memorable ones was having the old taco truck out front, and since things sort of slowed down after COVID, able to get rid of that, but avoiding any needing additional storage space going forward. So incorporating additional storage space in the basement, but also better sorting and larger sorting areas, as well as a more streamlined delivery entrance area off the ramp. But mostly getting the lobby size increased and creating the opportunity to actually have some additional boxes that have been requested. Also having some more sorting area in the front windows, customer sorting area that would be open and a little more light there. But it's about a 36% increase in square footage over what the post office has right now. And it's actually a bit more than that in terms of lobby and size increase, because I've been working with the post office and coming up with a system where actually the boxes can be sort of a wall mount system instead of having the system that you load from the back. The goal is that the post office space would be restored as well to its closer to its original sort of aesthetic, including the restoration of the brass and bronze door faces, and actually probably switching everything back to that and really making it sort of a really beautiful sort of historical postal space. Tony?
Okay, and then aside from the post office, the store, second goal is really to improve the store space, but not increase it. We're not proposing to increase the store's floor area. If anything, it's going down a little bit in relation to the post office picking up a little space. David, you want to explain how the general store floor layout is going to work?
So it's actually about, we've given quite a bit of space to the postal space. So it's about 18% less, but the bulk of the cooking and everything that was happening in the back, move that down into the basement, create more of an open space in the back. So the building and the store has the opportunity to actually begin to relate to the village and the open fields and the farmlands that are around it. And part of the front porch and the old general store configuration was the double doors, which allowed people to sort of come in and pass a little more easily and be able to come into much more open and larger open single space that flows all the way through and gives the opportunity to have a little more flow and movement through the space, even though it's a bit smaller. The other thing is, historically, the general stores and this general store specifically and the post office were all kind of one space, which was, an interesting historical way to sort of be able to have a sense of community and meet your neighbor. Obviously, having them a bit more separated these days is federal requirements. Right now, the postal, they're very interested in the layout right now that we have, in that the counter would be secured and that the lobby could have longer hours, because this configuration allows the lobby to actually have its own entrance both on hours and off hours, especially the way the vestibule is configured. So it would allow for longer hours and still have some relationship with the general store the way they used to, if people would like to see that. So again, sort of trying to bring keep the community aspect of this part of the design.
And in the upper left of this drawing, you see sort of that it's almost a standalone rectangle. That's the area, what we call a common area. And that's where we're trying to make improvements for accessibility. There's a ADA compliant stairs, there's an elevator bank, and ADA compliant bathrooms put in there. And so that is the sort of the only place that we could locate this and still be able to serve both operations and create a code compliant space. The last part of this is the attic. You know, what we have as a concept for the attic, it's on the next page. And we are proposing to increase the attic space a bit, as I mentioned earlier. The idea is not, this is not going to be part of the store, but it's intended to create a storage space really for the historic artifacts that the family has asked us to take on, which we were happy to do. We can create this space for it. Do you have any comments about that, David?
Yeah, it's kind of amazing that Merrill Hildreth kept most of the original books, the original cash register, a lot of the original store fixtures, some of the original items that they used to sell are all in the barn behind the general store. A bit of a secret, it's kind of out now, but it's really kind of amazing that all that is sitting right there, and to have a sort of a secure place to have this. We felt it was an amazing opportunity to actually have a place to put this and keep this as part of the village history in some way. Obviously, this is for the village to decide if this is something that they feel that they'd like to accommodate.
Yeah, so overall, we recognizing that it's a non-conforming use, although not all non-conforming uses are the same. This is not an asphalt plant in the middle of a residential neighborhood. As you said, Mayor, it's an important facility, but it is a non-conforming use. So we have to address with the zoning board the limitations on non-conforming uses. And the store is the non-conforming use. The post office, although it clearly predates zoning by many decades, it would probably be classified today as a special permit use. This is going to be John's call at the end of the day. But we think that the focus is going to be on the store space, and the way we propose this, the store space is not going up. Store space, if anything, is going down. There are some configuration changes that are increasing, like post office space is increasing, and the common area space is being created to address the code compliance issues. So that's going to be a big part of the discussion with the zoning board, I believe. But I think we're aiming to meet both the letter and the spirit of the code, and I think we've come up with a plan that can do that. But obviously, that'll be a big topic of discussion with our zoning board. So as far as process goes, Ray, you started talking about that earlier. We will start with the building inspector. That's really where all these applications have to start. And he's going to be the gatekeeper. He's going to review our plans and tell us how many variances we need. I'm going to warn the zoning board, it's going to sound like a lot, but the pre-existing nonconformities are even more. So what we intend to show you is that the overall project is going to result in a reduction of nonconformities, not an increase in nonconformities. Even from just setting the building back another 15 feet, we're going to accomplish some benefits to get it more compliant with the zoning code. On paper, it's going to sound like a lot, but it is a constrained site, and as I said, not all non-conforming uses are the same. And we hope that this will be viewed as a beneficial part of the community, not a negative part of the community, so that the non-conformities are looked at in a different light. We will, of course, we'll take our cues as to what order you want us to process this, but as far as we're concerned, we can do as much simultaneously as possible. That will make things more efficient. So if we're allowed, we're going to initiate the site plan process with this board. And whenever we're allowed to, we'll initiate the process with the Architectural and Historic Review Board. So that as changes are suggested from any different board, they can be simultaneously reviewed by all of them. And a change that the Architectural and Historic Review Board suggests could impact the variances, which could impact the site plan review. So I think the sooner we can get all three of those processes started, the better and the more efficient overall the process is going to be. And I've said this a couple of times, but the Hildreth family is going to be involved in the process to the extent that their property is part of this. You know, we have our building extending over their property line. They're giving us this sanitary easement, so they are to say they're the most interested neighbor in what's going to happen in this is an understatement. They are interested on so many levels, so we will be including them in the process from day one. Their names will be on the application too, for that reason, that their property is involved in this. So we will be doing that. Couple of other tidbits is that we have brought public water up to the property, or we haven't waited to do that. We knew that was going to be a requirement. So public water has already been brought up to both our property and the Hildreth house next door. And we are taking care of bringing the water into both facilities. So from an overall improvement standpoint, there's going to be improvements as to sanitary code, improvements as to the fire code. This will become a sprinkled facility, improvements as to the accessibility code, improvements to the zoning code, and we hope that you will view it as improvements to the historic integrity of the property too. So I think with that said, I'm happy to open this up to questions. You mentioned no comments from the board, but whatever questions you have, that's why we're here. We have a whole team here to start that process.
Does anybody have any questions about plans, what they're trying to do? Is that clear to everybody? Emily?
Well, I just had a question about the shared entrance. Historically, the store and the post office have not had the same hours. Has the post office talked?
Yes,
to you at all
David,
about
you want to? Yes, David, you want to explain that? Did you hear the question?
Yeah. So the goal is that the store would have, as the mayor said, everybody sort of walks in and says, well, we want to have 7 days a week. We're going to have a store that opens all the time. And historically, that's sort of proven not to be the case, but that is the intention. But the floor plan has also been laid out so that there is a way to get into the post office off hours. And the idea is that the postal space is designed so that the counters can be closed off and the lobby can actually be open all the time, the way a lot of the smaller villages and towns out here allow right now. So actually, this allows that post box lobby to be open 24 hours and so far the Postal Service has said that's something that they could work with.
Exactly what I don't want to do at this meeting is to drill down. The question of access is going to have to be reviewed by a number of boards. And I really don't think we should be drilling down here on that.
Whatever you want. We're here to answer questions.
The boards are going to have to review this. One of the questions that's going to have to be answered is, will this be acceptable or not? Whether we would want continue to have a separate entrance on Sagg Main, or if a common entrance really makes the post office more accessible or less accessible in the event that the store is closed for the winter, as it has been for many seasons. So these are substantive questions about what the boards thinks is each board in their area of responsibility thinks is advisable, and a full discussion with the applicant and among the board members themselves are required. This is not the place to do it.
Okay, I guess from a big picture answer, maybe we'll just leave it at this. Our goal is to make it more accessible, period. So whatever that is going to take, whether it's whichever entrances, whatever divisions between the store and the post office, whatever they are, our goal is to make the post office more accessible. And at least the concept plan would do that, but there may be plenty of ways to do it. So that's going to be our big goal. And you have to plan for everything, Mayor, but our plan is also to keep this open year round. So
just describe what your plan is.
yes, that's the plan.
Assuming everything goes well with permits and whatever, what's the time frame on this?
Probably the big question is the health department. I think this village has been accommodating, and we expect to be able to work with this village in a number of months, but you know, the health department's always a big question, and this is an unusual application for them because of the sanitary easement that's required for it. So it's hard to predict whether that's a matter of a few months or half a year. We would like to have a dialogue with the village about trying to reopen some space while we're pursuing these plans so that there can at least be some utility in the store, at least the front part of the store, or farm stands or whatever, that we can try to get some use back for this so that in the meantime, because it's sad to have it closed. And we would like to try to rectify that, knowing that the health department process is going to take a while.
So let's say the health department went well. What is your time frame?
I think the probably the best case scenario would be a few months through the 3 boards here and the health department. Probably a best case scenario.
I mean, from beginning to end, construction and changing.
I don't know, David, do you have an estimate for how long construction would take on this?
Construction 8 to 9 months. Our goal is that we get through all the boards and whatever work we can start right away. We're able to do that to expedite the whole process and have this thing back and serving the village and the community by next summer. We were shooting originally for this summer, but obviously there's a lot of moving parts here we had to sort out. So we like to have a presence. It's not really the project as a whole is not really a business proposition. It's mostly about having something for the community. And we'd like to have something for the community as soon as we can. So not a solid answer, but that's that's our goals with a lot of unknowns. I hope that helps.
We are working also with the post office to address that they're going to have a need for a temporary space while the construction is ongoing. So that's all in the works. We're trying to do as much simultaneously as we can so that we don't have this, delay after delay after delay. But really, probably the number one time frame is going to be how fast we can get to the health department.
One other question. When I worked there, I was able to stuff mail in the post office boxes, and we always did them from behind. Is that going to work here?
Yeah, there's a new plan. That's the Dave. You want to explain that? How the new?
I can, Mr. Honorable Mayor. Is this? Should I address this detail?
I don't really think it's germane.
Okay.
I just said there is the post office has a system.
Yeah, I've worked with the local postmaster general and the district managers to basically develop a system where all the postal box doors are mounted in a larger frame. So maybe it's 2 feet by 3 feet, and that whole thing opens up as a single frame, and you can load everything from the front, so it can actually sit against the wall. So sections of these would be loaded from the front, and that allows there to be more lobby space. So within the building envelope, we're trying to maximize as much lobby space, as much space for the post office as possible, still keep it intimate and of an appropriate village scale, but really use all the space that we have within the historical envelope that we have there.
Thank you.
Just one question about the staircase on the southern exposure. Have you considered maybe a spiral in the two-story section in the back of the building?
I think we've actually had talked about that. And so that's certainly a detail that we can,
That exterior staircase.
Again, this is something you should discuss with them at your board meeting.
Yeah.
And I hope we're going to be scheduling that discussion for May 23rd.
well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there are there federal standards and specifications apart from the boxes that have to be complied with? And will the post office's approval be preceding the presentation of the plan to our boards?
I think we already have, David, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we already have their endorsement of the layout that we're proposing. That's true, David?
We are going for written approval. We don't have that yet, but we've gotten verbal and some previews of the plan so far. And the system we're talking about for the post boxes is based on a system that they use now. And actually some of the modern aluminum boxes that are in there now use a similar kind of system. So we'd be applying that to it'd be the first time it was actually applied to the older historical boxes. And the goal is actually to have it all be the old historical brass bronze, beautiful old historical boxes. So it's actually period correct.
So if your concern is that we don't waste time.
Mr. Glasgow?
Yeah.
Can I suggest that if you do want to expedite this process, that you have the post office sign off on your plans before our boards have to review them? If changing them is going to change any configurations that are part of the regulatory process.
I understood that was probably the reason for the question, and we would not be here if we thought there was any real chance that that's going to be the case. Every change that's being done to the space for the post office is a change for their benefit and largely at their request. So getting the written sign off is something we will have to get, but it's not something that anybody expects is going to be withheld. So we wouldn't be wasting your time asking for something if it was something we were not sure we would be able to get.
Yep. So we agree with the pre-approval concept as much as we can get.
Any other questions pertaining to what they're doing? Board members, this board.
No, I think the plans are very clear,
Um,
and I look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you.
We've already gone into this a little bit, but first, I'd like to thank the applicant. The village is very fortunate to have new owners of this property, and particularly the fact that it passes the post office, and that they're willing, actually, in my impression, passionate about preserving the building and its character, and are willing to deploy the resources necessary to accomplish those goals. And so we're fortunate, and I'm glad that we have such new owners. We all should be thankful for that kind of new property owner of such an important place for the village. I said in the meeting, we'll try to organize and sequence this as much as we can. But as you said, this is a non-conforming building on a non-conforming lot in a non-conforming use. And that's all grandfathered. But once you start messing with the footprint, the overall volume, expansion, potential expansion of uses, as you're aware, this creates regulatory jungle that you're going to have to negotiate through, in which we're going to have to also thread our way through. And the sequencing is important unless we wanted to go in a merry-go-round where we have one board review something and another board takes issue with. And I would propose that we really need the following sequence. As I understand it, the problem is that virtually everything that's going to have to be approved is going to have CBA approval. Even the recommendations from the other two boards, if they require variances, they have to be approved by the ZBA before the other boards can approve them. So I think that the best way for us to proceed is to start having each of the other boards, particularly the AHRB, see if they can come to any consensus on the key issues that they're looking at. And I'm not talking about the color of window shutters or materials, but there are two key elements there. One is, will they approve relocating the store backwards? And I think the other obvious issue that they're going to have to determine is whether they want the roof line on the eastern portion of the building raised up to the same height as the current roof line. The elevations that we have here, which show the contrast, do indicate that there's going to be a kind of significant change in the profile and visual mass of the building, particularly coming down south on Main Street. At the very least, we need to get a consensus from that board on whether or not they would consider making those changes. Because if they don't, we're kind of back to square one. So I think that is essential. I think the village board is going to have to review their areas of concern, which also could impact what the ZBA is doing. And that's the problem. The ZBA can't even determine what it's supposed to be considering in terms of variances until the other two boards have weighed in with their recommendations. So I think that's where we should start, not necessarily sitting down with John Woodsman and putting together a catalog of the requisite variances for these plans, but to get some indication of what the other two boards are going to do before you actually get down to brass tacks with the CBA.
Sounds great. We're game.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
From my experience with architectural and zoning board, with both meetings and being at both meetings regularly, I would like to suggest possibly if it gets at a regular architectural and historic board meeting, sometimes it's a 3-page agenda and can go on for over 3 hours. And that's without something that is very unique like this that might take a lot more discussion and consideration. I might suggest that the architecture board's first wash or glance of it be an actual separate meeting, that they only glance at this and have their regular meeting also that month, and not to put you guys through two things. But I think the focus is so important to look at this concretely. And when you have 30 other people in the audience that need their permit for their gate or their 2-car garage add-on, it gets kind of stressful. And I don't know if you like that idea, but if they had a separate meeting, Tom, I'm just throwing that out there.
It's up to that board.
where you just concentrated on this shortly.
That's better. I appreciate your thoughts on that.
I would say we, as you can't see, I've asked Anthony Cohill, our retired former
He's holding his
and
head.
revered village attorney, if he would take on the role of being the coordinator and advisor to all the boards, as he has been in the past, and coordinate this application and explain to each of the boards what their responsibilities are, and to recommend how we can do this to expedite it in the most effective way. And I thank him for coming back, and this was actually recommended to me by the current village attorney. As he knows, that Tony was in on this at the very beginning when I was first approached by the property owners about this plan. And so I think he can advise the other board chairs what to do. I note that on this call is Richard Warren, looking very tan. This is your first day back, Richard?
Second.
I would like him to take a look at these plans and from the point of view of the planning board and village board, to make a list of all the various aspects of this plan that we're going to have to consider.
Mhm.
And in terms of the applicant's own timetable, whether or not any of the things they are asking for will change the secret status.
Mhm. Could I just ask one thing, Don? One of the things that would be helpful for me to know is what is proposed to be the Sagg General Store. You know, when I look at the floor plans that are the existing floor plans, they show that much of Sagg General Store consists of food coolers, counters, drink displays, food displays, fryers, grills, refrigerators. So the entire floor plan is filled up with that. And as I understand it, all the cooking stuff is going down into the basement of this proposed plan, which is what was said before. And we just have an open floor plan. So it just would be helpful for me to have an understanding of actually what is the use that's proposed in the general store, how it's going to operate. There's a gravel area outside. We've got large doors that are going to open up out the back. Just would be helpful in terms of evaluating it, you know, to have a better understanding of how this use will be in here.
Mr. Don, would you like this addressed now or at a later meeting?
Well, you can feel free to contact Richard Warren
Yeah, it's fine.
in terms of clarifying for him the issues that they'll be reporting to us on.
Very good.
I want to follow up on that, without getting into the specifics of the uses within the property though. As from the zoning board's point of view, am I to understand that there is not going to be a need for a change of use variance, but only area variances, because they're significantly different.
That's what we need.
Yeah. Yeah.
Richard's.
Okay, because Tony did mention something before that puzzled me a little bit. The post office is a pre-existing non-conforming use within the property, but you spoke of something about a special permit.
What I said, I think, and this is something that I can talk through with John and with Mr. Cohill. I think that the post office is not a non-conforming use.
Because it's a federal.
It's a pre-existing use, it's a pre-existing non-conforming facility, but it's not a non-conforming use because it's a special permit use. The special permit uses are of a different ilk than a true non-conforming use that is not permitted regardless of special permit. So that part of it John may decide that part of it changes to it require a special permit, not a zoning board determination. But any change to the Sagg store, general store, any change to it is gonna require, we change 1 square foot of it. It's gonna at least require your review to determine that we're not increasing the non-conforming use, because that's the prohibited thing in the code is you can't increase the size of your non-conforming use. So,
And specific, that's what,
yeah. Well, you don't have a lot of non-conforming uses and true non-conforming uses.
no, 8.
That's still in the nature of an area variance, because it's a change in the size of the non-conforming use, but it's not a change of use per se.
If it were a change of use, we'd have,
And that's what I'm trying to understand for sure. Okay.
and that's what we have to convince you of, is
And
that
that's
we're not
what we're
changing
gonna
use.
rely to some extent on Richard Ford.
Okay.
Now, I'll mention this too, over the years, who knows how many different things have been sold out of the store. There's pictures of the gas pumps that were there at some point. We're not proposing to.
I would say.
Reinitiate a gas station.
I suggest this is long event.
Would it assist if I worked with Tom to set up a date that his board would be available in addition to their regular meeting a week from Monday, but shortly for the first glance so they can talk?
If you wish, it would be great.
It's right here. It's on the calendar. It's whether their place is available and it's got to be advertised. So we have to figure a date that is a time frame where I could put it in the paper. So I didn't know if you plan on doing it before the 23rd.
And we'll talk about.
Yeah, because
That's
they-
next week.
Yeah. So it would have to be next week. I have,
What
time is it? If I get out of here, I can put a notice in the paper.
Well,
But
we
it's
can
next
iron
Thursday.
these details out.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll
So-
stand by. How about, we'll say that we'll stand by and you let us know as soon as you can get us on.
Right, yeah, the following Monday is Memorial Day, so that's, if some of the committee has, because they have other jobs, Monday is their normal day, so.
Tom, I hope that you will encourage all the members of your board. I don't see any of them on this call.
You have Anthony up there.
Anthony,
Anthony, to
And Robert's on there
familiarize
too, by the way.
themselves
Robert Moranis is on there.
with these plans so that they can, so that you know what issues you have to address. And I'm talking about the major ones, not necessarily the color of a shutter or, but anything where if you didn't approve it, it would substantially affect the footprint of the building.
And John, just for your information, the only AHRB member that is not present at this meeting is Megan.
Oh, I
She's an alternate.
didn't see Nick.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick either. Nick is not on, you're correct. So Nick and Megan, and then the only ZBA members are John White and Meredith Foster.
All right, any others? Do any of you have any other things you want to say about this application and how, suggestions on how we should handle it?
Sounds good, what you're doing.
Okay, then I'd be very happy to get a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all very much.
We have our regular routine. He looks at me and she does a second.